The blind date ended the way it always did for Marcus Webb. A tight smile. A vague excuse. Eyes that stopped meeting his the moment she found out he was a single dad. He stayed in his seat a little longer than he needed to, not because he was comfortable, but because standing up too fast felt like admitting something. When he finally reached for his jacket, a voice cut through the low noise of the coffee shop. Calm. Even. Unhurried. You can sit here if you want. Marcus stopped. He turned his head. The woman at the next table was looking at him. Not with pity. Not with that tilted head softness people used when they felt sorry for you. Just directly. Like she had made a decision and was waiting to see if he'd catch up. The invitation hung between them, simple and impossible to explain. Was it kindness? Was it nothing? Was it the beginning of something he had stopped letting himself believe in? He didn't know. But he sat down. He had arrived at the compound 15 minutes early, which he always did. Not because he was eager. He had stopped being eager about these things a long time ago. He was early because being early meant he could choose a spot near the back windows, away from the speaker mounted above the register, somewhere the light was less harsh and the ambient noise felt like texture instead of pressure. He ordered black coffee. He set his phone face down on the table. He put his hands flat on the wood and told himself the same way he always told himself that this time might be different. The woman who walked in at 630 was named Nadia. She'd told him that in their text exchange, along with the fact that she worked in product development and had recently come back from a month in Portugal. She wore a slate gray blazer, checked her phone twice before she even reached the table, and thanked him for standing when she approached without actually looking at him. They talked about work. She asked if he traveled. He said not much. She said she loved it, that Portugal felt like a different version of living. Marcus nodded and said that sounded amazing because it did. Then she asked if he had kids. He'd been waiting for it. It always landed somewhere between the second and third question, like a checkpoint. Neither of them could avoid. He set his cup down carefully. Yeah, he said. A daughter. She's 7. Nadia's face didn't change all at once. Her expression stayed polite. But her posture shifted just slightly, just enough, and the space between them felt wider than the table. She asked how long he'd been separated. He told her he wasn't separated. His wife had passed away 4 years ago. There was a pause. The kind that comes when someone calculates something and comes up short. I'm so sorry, Nadia said. Her voice was soft and she meant it probably. But she looked down at her phone 3 seconds after she said it. And then it buzzed. And she glanced at the screen with the look Marcus had come to recognize, the look that was really just a person deciding how quickly they could leave without seeming cruel. She told him something had come up. She said she was genuinely sorry. She stood, shook his hand, and walked out without looking back. Marcus sat there. He looked at his coffee. It had gone cool. He didn't drink it. He didn't feel angry. He'd passed through angry a long time ago. What he felt now was something duller than that, the slow, familiar compression of a space that had briefly been open and was now closed again. He reached into his jacket, left $12 on the table, and stood. The shop was small. Brick walls, concrete floors, Edison bulbs strung between exposed pipes. The kind of place that felt intentionally impermanent, designed for people who were passing through. He turned toward the door. You can sit here if you want. He stopped. The woman had dark hair pulled back loosely, the kind of loose that looked like it started the day neat and had given up somewhere around noon. She had both hands wrapped around a mug, and on the table beside it a worn leather notebook, edges soft with use. She wasn't leaning toward him. She wasn't performing concern. She was just there, watching him with an expression that didn't ask anything of him. Marcus looked at the empty chair across from her. He looked back at her face. She waited. He didn't know why he said yes. Maybe because his daughter was at her grandparents' house until Friday afternoon and the apartment was going to be dark and quiet in a way that had stopped feeling like peace. Maybe because the way she'd said it didn't sound like charity. It sounded like a choice offered plainly, take it or leave it. Or maybe he was just tired of leaving. He walked over and set his jacket on the back of the chair. When he sat down, she tilted her head slightly, not quite studying him, just noticing. That looked rough, she said. Marcus let out a short breath. It wasn't great. Blind date. Yeah, she didn't ask for details. He appreciated that. She just picked up her mug, took a sip, and set it back down beside the notebook. I had one too, she said. About an hour and a half ago. Same place, actually. Marcus glanced around the room on instinct. How'd it go, he asked. If I wanted kids, she said. I told him I couldn't have them. He said that was a deal breaker and left before his order even came. Marcus didn't have an answer for that. She didn't seem to need one. She just looked at him with that same steady expression, like she'd already made her peace with the story and was only telling it now because it was relevant. I'm Joe, she said. Marcus. She nodded once, the way people do when they're actually filing something away, instead of just being polite. You don't have to stay, she said. I just thought you looked like you needed a minute before walking back out into that. I do, Marcus said. Thanks. They sat without talking for a moment. It wasn't awkward. It was just quiet, in the way that quiet can be when two people have both run out of effort and find surprisingly that they don't need it. Outside, the sky had gone from copper to gray. A few people moved along the sidewalk, hunched against the wind. South Congress was never fully still, but at this hour, it had a slower rhythm. The dinner crowd not yet out, the late-night crowd not yet started. So Joe said, breaking the silence without breaking the mood. What was the deal breaker this time? Marcus looked at her. She was watching him with something that felt like curiosity, not the probing kind, the kind that wanted detail, more like the kind that came from someone who'd been through enough of these to recognize the shape of the thing. Single dad, he said. Joe nodded, slow and unsurprised. And that's a problem. Usually, he turned his cup in his hands. People hear it and they start running the math. Baggage, someone else's kid. A schedule that belongs to someone else's grief. It's just easier for them to move on. Easier for them, Joe said. Yeah. She looked at him evenly. For what it's worth, I don't think that's baggage. I think that's just a life. Marcus didn't know what to say. He was used to hearing things like that wrapped in the tone of someone trying to make him feel better about something they'd already decided to avoid. But Joe said it the same way she said everything else, like a fact she'd arrived at on her own and wasn't asking him to confirm. The silence came back. This time, it felt different. Less like space that needed filling, and more like ground that had been cleared. Joe looked out the window. Her fingers rested on the notebook but didn't open it. Can I ask you something, she said. Sure. Why do you keep going on these dates if they always end the same way? Marcus had asked himself that question more times than he could count. He thought about the honest answer before he gave it. I guess I keep thinking maybe one of them won't end that way, he said. Or maybe I just don't know what else to do. Joe seemed to sit with that. Most people would have dressed that up, she said. Said something about hope. Staying open. Not giving up. I'm not most people. Clearly. There was something in how she said it, not dismissive, not teasing, that felt like recognition. Like she was noting something real rather than offering a compliment. What about you? Marcus asked. Same reason, Joe smiled. It was the kind of smile that lived mostly in the eyes and didn't claim more than it had. Same reason, she said. I keep hoping I'll meet someone who doesn't spend the first 20 minutes deciding whether I'm fixable. She looked down at her hands, then back up. I'm not broken. I'm just different from what they expected. Marcus understood that more than he was comfortable admitting. He'd spent 4 years being treated like a complexity, a complication, someone who came with too much history and not enough flexibility. It didn't matter that he was still himself, still had a job he was good at, still cooked dinner, still laughed at things. All anyone seemed to see was the single dad part, and that was enough to close the door before it even opened. You said your date left because you can't have kids, Marcus said. He kept his voice careful. That happens a lot, often enough, Joe said. She didn't sound bitter. She sounded tired in the specific way that comes from having the same conversation too many times. People say it doesn't matter at first. Sometimes they believe it when they say it. But a few weeks and a few months they start thinking about the future they pictured. And I'm not in it. So they go. That's not fair. No, Joe said. But I understand it. People want what they want. I stopped being angry about it a while back. You're allowed to still be angry about it. She looked at him. And for the first time since he sat down, something shifted in her face. Not anger, more like a kind of recognition. Like he'd said something she hadn't heard before, worded exactly the way she needed to hear it. I used to be, she said. Being angry just made me smaller. So I stopped. She paused. Doesn't mean I wasn't right to be. Marcus nodded. He thought he understood that. They sat in the quiet again. But the quality of it had changed. It wasn't the silence of two strangers being careful around each other anymore. It was something closer to the silence of two people who were no longer performing. Jo picked up her mug, realized it was empty, and set it back down. "Do you want another coffee?" she asked. Marcus glanced at his. It had been cold for a while. "Yeah, sure." She stood and walked to the counter. He watched her go, then looked around the room. The couple near the door had left. A guy with a laptop in the corner was staring out the window. The barista was wiping down the machine with the unhurried focus of someone counting down to closing. The shop felt like what it was, a place built for people in between things. Jo came back with 2 cups. She set one in front of him. "Black," she said. "How'd you know? You ordered it when you came in." "I was already here." She sat down and wrapped her hands around her own cup. "So, how long have you been doing this, the blind date thing?" "About 14 months. He picked up the coffee. "Hot, bitter, good. My friends kept telling me I needed to get back out there, that it wasn't healthy to spend every night at home alone." He paused. They were probably right. But getting back out there doesn't do much if no one actually wants to stay. Jo looked at him. She held whatever she was thinking for a moment, like she was deciding how much of it to offer. "I don't think the problem is you," she said finally. "I think the problem is that people don't know what to do with a life that doesn't match the version they rehearsed in their head." Marcus turned that over. It wasn't the first time someone had said something like it. But it was the first time it landed without feeling like a consolation prize. "That might be true," he said. "Doesn't make it easier, though." "No," Jo said. "It doesn't." They drank slowly. The light outside had gone completely now, and the street was lit only by storefronts and headlights. Marcus could see his own reflection in the window, faint, blurred at the edges, sitting across from a woman he hadn't known existed 2 hours ago. "Can I ask you something else?" Jo said. "Go ahead. Do you regret it? Having a daughter, losing your wife, all of it?" It was the kind of question that would have made most people flinch. Jo asked it the same way she asked everything, level, without apology, as if she trusted him to handle it. Marcus thought about Lily, about the way she laughed when he read to her in different voices and kept asking him to do them again. He thought about Rachel, about Sunday mornings when she'd make coffee and hum something under her breath like she was the only one in the room. He thought about everything he'd lost and everything that was still there. "No," he said. "I don't regret any of it." Jo nodded. "Good." She said it like she meant it. "You shouldn't." "What about you?" he asked. "Do you regret anything?" She smiled, but it was the sad kind, the kind that came from somewhere real. "I spent a long time thinking I was the problem," she said. "That there was something fundamentally wrong with me that made me hard to keep. It took me a long time to understand that wasn't true." She set her cup down. "I regret believing it as long as I did." Marcus understood that too. Not the specifics, his version of it was different. But the feeling of looking at yourself through someone else's disappointment for so long that you started to wonder if they were right. He'd done that. He was probably still doing it some days. "I'm glad you figured it out," he said. Jo looked at him. For the first time since he'd sat down, her smile reached her eyes all the way. "Me too." They stayed until the barista started stacking chairs. Neither of them seemed to be hurrying toward anything. Jo glanced at the clock on the wall, the kind with exposed hardware and industrial hands, and then back at him. "I should go," she said. "Early shoot tomorrow. Sunrise out near Lake Travis." Marcus nodded. He had a site review at 8, a structural report due by noon. He should go too. But before he could stand, Jo reached down beside her and picked up the leather notebook. She set it on top of her bag. Then she pulled out her phone, unlocked it, and slid it across the table. "Put your number in," she said. Marcus looked at the phone, then at her. "Why? Because this was a real conversation," Jo said. "And I don't want to walk out of here and have it just become a thing that happened once." She looked at him directly. "I don't think you want that either." She was right. He didn't. He picked up her phone and typed in his number, handed it back. She saved it, tucked the phone away. "I'm not promising anything," she said. "I don't know what this is or where it goes, but I think it's worth finding out." Something shifted in Marcus's chest. Not hope exactly, he'd learned to be careful with hope. Something quieter than that. The idea that the question was still open, that the answer wasn't already written. "Yeah," he said. "I think so too." They walked to the door together. Outside, the October air hit both of them, that particular Austin, almost cold, the kind that surprised you every year, even though it came at the same time. Jo pulled her jacket tighter and looked at him. "Thanks for sitting down," she said. "Thanks for asking," Marcus said. She gave him a small nod, something between a smile and a wave, and turned left toward the parking lot. He watched her go until she rounded the corner. Then he turned right and started walking. The street was quieter now. The music from a bar 2 blocks down, carried in small pieces. He kept his hands in his jacket pockets and walked slowly, not because he was in no hurry, but because he was doing something he hadn't done in a long time. He was paying attention to how he felt. Not devastated, not gutted the way he usually was after one of these nights. Something different, something almost like relief. He walked home. The apartment was the way he'd left it. Dark in the main rooms, a light left on over the sink. He turned on the kitchen light and stood there for a moment, taking in the familiar still of it. The dishes from breakfast. The pile of Lily's drawings on the counter, she left them everywhere, little paper claims on the space. He picked up the one on top, a horse probably, or maybe a dog, standing next to a figure that was clearly supposed to be him, tall with a square head and a lopsided smile. She'd written Dad plus horse at the bottom in the careful crooked letters of someone who was still figuring out how letters worked. He put it on the refrigerator. Then he went to bed. The next morning, Marcus woke up expecting nothing. That was the practice he'd built. Don't anticipate. Don't run scenarios. Don't let yourself calculate the odds of something good, because the only thing that accomplishes is making it worse when it doesn't come. He made coffee. He opened his phone. There was a message from a number he didn't have saved. It said, "This is Joe. Just wanted to confirm that wasn't a fake number." Marcus stared at it. Then he typed back, "It's real." 3 seconds passed. Then, "Good. I wasn't totally sure last night actually happened." Marcus typed back, "It did." He paused. Added, "The coffee was real at least." A few seconds later, "The coffee was better than the company I was supposed to be there for. So that's something." He set his phone down and realized he was smiling at the screen, not in the performed way, not in the way he smiled when he was trying to seem like someone who was fine. Actually smiling. He tried to remember the last time a text had done that, and couldn't locate the moment. The messages over the next few days were small. Jo sent him a photo of a gas station latte she'd bought on the way to a shoot. The foam was collapsing in on itself, and the cup was visibly sad. Marcus sent her a picture of Lily's latest drawing, which was theoretically a wolf, but functioned more as a collection of triangles with eyes. Jo replied, "That's exactly what a wolf looks like. Your daughter understands wolves." It wasn't much, but it didn't need to be. It was just present, the kind of contact that costs nothing and means something which Marcus had learned not to take for granted. By Thursday, he had almost talked himself into letting it stay exactly that way. A few messages, a warm memory, the kind of thing that glowed and faded without demanding anything from him. He was good at accepting less than he wanted. He'd had years of practice. Then Jo texted him that morning, "Are you free today?" Marcus held the phone for a long time. He thought about all the reasons to say, not quite. He thought about how easy it would be to let this settle into the comfortable distance of someone he'd met once and texted a few times. He thought about how clean that was. How safe. Then he thought about the way she had looked at him across that table. Not the look people gave him when they were being kind, because they felt sorry for him. The look of someone who was actually paying attention. He typed back, "Yeah, I'm free." They met at the Barton Springs Trail that afternoon. Neither of them called it a date, which felt like the right choice because what it actually was couldn't be reduced to that word. It was two people who had decided they weren't done talking. Marcus brought coffee. She smiled when she saw him carrying 2 cups. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "You did it first," he said, handing her one. They walked the trail toward the creek. The wind came off the water in cold gusts, and Marcus could feel it through his jacket, but didn't mind. Jo had her camera bag on one shoulder not working, just carrying it the way some people carry keys, like she felt strange without it. She talked about a project she was behind on, a series she was doing on drought-damaged landscapes across central Texas. He talked about Lily, about how lately she'd been asking questions about her mom that he didn't always know how to answer. "What do you tell her?" Jo asked. Marcus thought about it. "The truth," he said. "As much of it as she can hold at 7. I don't want her to think Rachel was perfect, and I don't want her to think she wasn't loved. Both of those things matter. Joe nodded. That sounds hard. It is, Marcus said. But I think it's the right thing. She deserves to grow up with something real, not a story that protects her from her own life. They stopped near a wooden bench that looked out over a bend in the creek. They sat. Ducks moved across the surface in small, purposeful clusters, cutting through the cold without appearing to register it. Joe held her cup in both hands. She watched the water. "Can I tell you something?" she said. "Yeah. I almost didn't text you." She kept her eyes on the creek. "I sat there for probably 10 minutes with your number on the screen, running through all the ways it could go badly." "What changed your mind?" Joe looked at him. "I realized I was more scared of not trying than I was of it not working out." Marcus held that for a moment. He knew the feeling, or rather he knew the version of it he'd been living in, which was the inverse. He'd been so afraid of trying that not trying had started to feel like the same thing as being safe. But safe and fine weren't the same thing, and he'd known that for a while, even when he hadn't admitted it. "I'm glad you did," he said. "Me too." They stayed on that bench longer than either of them planned to. Marcus told her about the night after Rachel died when he tried to cook dinner for Lily and burned everything so completely that the smoke alarm went off twice, and Lily sat on the kitchen floor laughing while he waved a dish towel at the ceiling. They'd eaten cereal. He'd cried in the bathroom afterward briefly and quietly so she wouldn't hear. Joe told him about the 5 days she spent alone in her apartment after her diagnosis, blinds down, phone off, replaying all the ways her future had just changed shape. She'd come out on the other side of it with a different understanding of herself, but the door that took her there had been hard. "I thought it would make me unlovable," she said. "For a long time I thought that's just what I was." "It doesn't," Marcus said. She looked at him. "I know that now, but it cost something to learn it." "Yeah," she said. It did. The sun had shifted lower, redder, cutting across the surface of the creek in long, flat lines. They walked back toward the parking area, slowly, not rushing. Joe stopped by her car and turned to face him. "I don't know what this is," she said. "And I'm not going to pretend I do." She held his gaze. "But I want to keep doing it. Whatever it is." Marcus looked at her. He wanted to say something precise and reassuring, some clean statement that would communicate exactly what he felt. He didn't have one. So, he said the truth. "I don't know either, but I want to keep doing it too." Joe reached out and squeezed his hand quick, just a second, the kind of contact that doesn't claim anything but means everything. Then, she got in her car. Marcus stood there until the taillights disappeared around the curve. When he walked into the house, Lily was on the couch watching a cartoon with a blanket pulled up to her chin. She looked up when she heard him. "Hi, Dad." "Hey, sweetheart." She went back to the show. Marcus went to the kitchen. He filled a pot with water, pulled a box of pasta from the cabinet, and stood there in the quiet of the kitchen while the stove did its work. His phone buzzed. "Joe, thanks for today." He typed back, "Thanks for texting me first." "A few seconds, any time." Marcus set the phone down. Lily came padding into the kitchen in her socks and climbed onto the chair at the table. She rested her chin in her hands and watched him stir the pasta with the focused look she used for things she found genuinely interesting. "Did you have a good day?" she asked. Marcus looked at her. "Yeah," he said. "I really did." She grinned. "Good." They ate at the table. Lily told him about her time at her grandparents' house, the movie they watched, the walk they took, the specific type of bird her grandfather had identified at the feeder and then gotten wrong twice before looking it up. Marcus listened and asked questions and felt something settle in his chest that he didn't quite have a name for. It wasn't happiness exactly. Happiness felt too bright for what this was. It was something steadier, something that didn't need conditions. After Lily went to bed, Marcus sat on the couch with his phone in his hand and thought about texting Joe. He couldn't figure out what to say that wouldn't feel like too much or too little, so he just sat with it for a while, with the quiet and the low hum of the refrigerator, and the feeling that was still sitting in his chest, strange and new. He thought about all the nights he'd spent in this room feeling like he was waiting for something that wasn't coming, all the times he'd pulled back just before something could matter, because mattering meant risk, and risk meant the possibility of another clean, quiet loss. He picked up his phone. He typed, "I know, we both said we don't know where this is going. I just wanted to say I'm okay with that. I think I needed to meet someone who was okay with not knowing too." He hit send before he could revise it into something safer. A few minutes passed. His phone buzzed. "Joe, I think that's exactly what we both needed. Then the notebook's going to run out of pages before this story does. That's a good sign. Marcus read it twice. He set the phone down on the cushion beside him and leaned back. Outside, the city was doing what it always did, moving, humming, burning light into the dark. But in the house, in the small kitchen with Lily's drawings on the refrigerator and the dishes drying on the rack, things felt different than they had this morning. He wasn't sure what was coming. He wasn't sure if he and Joe would last a month or a season or the rest of their lives. He wasn't sure if either of them was fully ready for the complications, for the tenderness, for the specific and unglamorous work of letting someone in after you've learned very carefully how to keep people at a comfortable distance. But for the first time in 4 years, the uncertainty didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a door that was still open. And Marcus had already walked through it. He just hadn't noticed until now. He thought about the woman who had asked him to sit down, not out of pity, not out of obligation, but because she saw a person across a room who looked like he could use a minute and she decided to offer him one. He thought about what it had cost her to do that. What it had cost both of them over the years to stay open enough to still be capable of it. And he thought that maybe that was the whole thing. Not the grand gesture. Not the perfect moment. Just the decision to stay in the room when it would be easier to leave. To say sit here instead of looking away. To text back instead of letting the number expire. He picked up the phone one more time. "See you soon," he typed. Joe replied in seconds, "Yeah, you will." Marcus set the phone down. In the bedroom down the hall, Lily was asleep, probably with one arm hanging off the bed the way she always slept. Tomorrow he had a site review. Next week she had a school thing. Life was full of all its ordinary weight, the kind that used to feel like it was pinning him in place. Tonight it just felt like life. And that finally was enough. Sometimes the person who changes things doesn't arrive with a grand entrance. They're just already there, sitting at the next table, holding a worn notebook, waiting to see if you'll take a chance on a quiet moment. We spend so much time trying to look like people who have it together, like our grief is manageable and our lives are clean enough for someone else to step into. But the truth is, the people worth finding don't need your life to be clean. They need it to be real. You are not your losses. You are not your limitations. You are not the thing that made the last person leave. You're just someone still trying to move forward the same as everyone else, in every coffee shop, on every trail, at every table, where someone is quietly hoping the next conversation will be the one that finally doesn't end too soon. Keep sitting down. Keep saying yes. Keep being honest about who you are, even when it's cost you before, because somewhere someone is hoping you will.